So in this video, I'm just going to real quick show how to load some data from an API. So I've got the Pokemon database here. It's just a free database with some JSON. If you go, for example, to this /Pokemon and type in a Pokemon name like Pikachu, it'll give you this big list of JSON data. So I'm just going to put this into the program and say, here's the URL I want to load. I'm going to have to get the data using URL open. So URL open is part of URL lib. I'm also going to get request. So I'm importing URL open and request because I want to build a request. So I'm going to call URL open with the request. And if you see in VS Code, it pops up with what you need to pass in. The first thing is URL. And in our case, we want some additional data. We want headers because we want some headers that specify we're using Mozilla browser. So we're just going to say the user agent is Mozilla. So this is actually just the request. And then the data, we're going to have to use request read, which just reads the data in the request. So now we should have some data. So let's take a look. I'm going to run it real quick. And you can see in the console, we're getting all this data. If you go back here, you can see that there's a key called abilities. And inside of that, there is, lightning rod and this and that. So I'm going to read basically that. So we're going to say, data abilities. And let's just print that real quick. Okay, and what you'll find is that this isn't going to actually load up from this key because we still need to parse the JSON. So how do you parse JSON? First, you have to import JSON library, and then you call loads. So instead of doing this here, I'm going to call it on parsed. And I'm going to create this variable called parsed, which is JSON loads data. So it loads in whatever's in data, which we just read from this API, parses it so that it's just a bunch of objects in Python. And then I should be able to get this key for abilities. Object has no tribute read. So I've done something wrong here. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Load, it loads. I just typed that wrong. My mistake. Okay, so now we've got just the abilities part coming through, which isn't that many. Not that many abilities. So let's just say we want to print something more user-friendly, such as Pikachu has this many abilities. And we're going to need to format this string. And what that does is it basically replaces these curly braces with whatever the first argument here is. So I want to get the length, which is len of abilities. I run it and I see Pikachu has 2 abilities. And maybe I want to print one of them and say the first one is, and then I'm going to do the same thing with format here, but I'm going to do abilities and grab the first element, which is indexed with 0, and it'll spit out this JSON here. If I want to get just the name, for example, I could say ability name. Now it says Pikachu has 2 abilities. The first one is lightning rod. Okay, so super quick crash course style how to read JSON data, use it in your Python program. You can take it from here to build an application that does all sorts of things by reading from public data sources or your own data source. But that's the basics using URL lib request, URL open, and the JSON loads function. All right, that's it. Thanks.